Romance is one of my favorite genres to see explored in anime, especially when it's done well. Unfortunately, you don't always get to see that because it is very, very easy to mess a romance anime up. And there can be many reasons for this. Often the characters may just be pretty boring and bland. They may not have much in the way of flaws to develop. Possibly they don't have good chemistry to begin with. And those are all problems that you would expect a show to avoid when its entire point is trying to establish a meaningful and justified romantic pairing. But you would be surprised at how often those issues creep up. But another issue that is a little more tricky to avoid is the pacing. You need to make sure that the two characters involved aren't rushed into this romance prematurely, in which case their bond wouldn't necessarily feel justified, but you also can't have it drag out. If you end up taking forever and ever and ever for these two characters just to end up together, you're going to bother a lot of people. You're going to make things feel very slow and like you don't really know what you're doing, as though you just need the story to keep going on for no reason other than to make it continue going on. Neither scenario is satisfying. And while the latter probably tends to be more common in anime, you will definitely experience the former as well. As such, when a romance comes along that is able to strike that balance well, it is worth appreciating. The Dangers in My Heart, which recently finished up its second season, is one such example. A romance anime that I feel is one of the best we have gotten in quite a long time. And it achieves this by having characters that are flawed but interesting, characters who feel justified in their romance, and by having a proper pacing throughout. And because we're probably going to have to wait a while to get a third season, given there isn't a lot of source material left unadapted, I feel this is as good a time as any to discuss this show in more detail than I already have in the past. So let's dive right in. This show didn't really get the proper expectations for it when it was first announced. And a lot of that has to do with its initial synopsis, one that I myself fell victim to because it presents this show as being fairly cringy, talking about how the main character, Kyotaro, is really kind of obsessed with the idea of murder, mostly because he just likes crime dramas and murder investigations and stuff like that. That in of itself is not the issue, but the show kind of makes it seem like he's this creep, this guy who fantasizes about how he's going to murder certain people in his class. And that's weird. That's not okay. There's something wrong with that. But it's really kind of blown out of proportion by the synopsis. And it's something that the show very quickly drops entirely. So I do feel that the way the show was described before it came out did not do it any favors. It made people, including myself, think it was really not going to be worth watching. And because of that, it ended up being this pretty big sleeper hit when the first season aired about a year ago. Because once you realize that that aspect of the show really isn't as prominent as you would expect, and eventually it's just gone from the show entirely, what you're left with is a genuinely really sweet and heartwarming romance between two people who are very flawed in a lot of ways, who use their bond to improve each other and ultimately just make their lives happier and better. Kyotaro is, of course, what you would kind of expect for someone of his age. He's an awkward middle school student. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He feels weird around people, which is sort of why he has those weird sort of fantasies at the beginning of the show. But once he meets Ana Yamada, his entire world changes. And it's not an instant thing where he's in love with her from the get-go. Both characters meet in a very natural way by spending time together in the library, and little by little they get to genuinely know each other, not for what their reputations might suggest. Ana Yamada is what you would expect from a popular girl. She's perceived as being very attractive to the point where she's working as a model. She has a lot of friends and a lot of people wish that they could be with her. Kyotaro doesn't really want that at first, even though he recognizes all of those attributes about her. They are in completely different worlds, but by spending time together, one-on-one, they learn so much about each other, and they form, little by little, a genuine friendship. And it's important that it doesn't jump right to romance. It starts off with these characters becoming friends. It doesn't rush things. It takes its time building their relationship, so it feels genuine for these people who don't really know each other before the beginning of the show to eventually end up in a romantic situation. You have to start somewhere. And I appreciate that the show has the patience to make their bond feel genuine without dragging things out. And it gets to the point where by the end of the first season, even if they don't want to admit it yet, they both definitely have feelings for each other as they spend more time together, both in school and outside of school, and ultimately try to support each other with their various interests, learning more about each other, and importantly, recognizing that neither one of them is perfect. Obviously, the show, from the get-go, because he is our POV character, makes it clear that Kyotaro is not perfect, that he has a number of flaws. His awkwardness, his difficulty with making friends, his concerns about how people are going to perceive him and Yamada, because he doesn't want her popularity to be affected by hanging out with somebody like him. The kind of thing you might expect someone in middle school to be worried about. But Yamada herself is not perfect, even though that's the perception that people would have of her. She struggles trying to balance her work as a model with just trying to be a normal teenage girl, and that's something that really comes to a head later on in the second season. She also is constantly eating things. She leaves messes all over the place. Like, the show does a lot to make it clear she is not perfect. She has flaws. She has problems. She has insecurities. She is as human as anyone else. Anime often falls into the trap of making one or both of its characters in a romance seem so perfect that they don't feel like real people. It's both refreshing to see and essential to see a show handle both of its leads in this way, to make it clear they have problems they need to overcome, and most critically, that they can work towards overcoming those problems through their relationship with each other. Kyotaro and Anna's support for each other doesn't just develop their romance, but ultimately helps them grow as people. They are different, more mature people by the end of the second season compared to where they were at the beginning. The best thing a romance anime can do is make you care about both of its characters and their character development, even independently of the romance itself. Because while yes, their development is inexorably tied to their romantic growth, the fact that I can look at these characters and say, these are good, well-developed, interesting characters on their own, says a lot about the strength of this series. Another important aspect of the show that I would be remiss not to talk about is the direction. Whenever the show wants a scene to stick in your mind, it will. The animation, the angles, the music, all of it will be timed perfectly for each emotional scene to hit you. The strength of direction is something that I feel is somewhat underappreciated in anime, and even I don't do a perfect job of articulating exactly why certain scenes hit so hard, but I can recognize that when everything comes together, certain scenes will impact you more if the direction is on point. If something isn't, if the music isn't quite there or it doesn't fit, if the angles of the scene are not as well as they could be, if the animation isn't top-notch, a scene will not hit as well as it would if it has all those qualities. And the dangers in my heart always make sure that the scenes that need to hit home will. And because of that, it's inherently going to stick in your head a lot longer than another show that doesn't have that same quality of direction. By the end of the show's second season, I believe you will be satisfied with the way their romance has progressed. Starting off with them not even knowing each other, to slowly becoming friends, to eventually developing feelings for each other, you will be satisfied by this journey. It doesn't drag things out unnecessarily, but it also doesn't rush them together. You see the growth in them personally as they develop their romance, to the point where they have made their lives so much better just by knowing each other. Even if they didn't end up together, their lives would have been improved from knowing each other. And that is everything that I could want from a romance anime. The direction, the animation, the character growth, and the characters' personalities are all on point. These are flawed but believable people in a romance that makes sense, that is properly justified and paced. It does everything right. And I implore you, if you were put off by the initial description of the show when it was first coming out, do yourself a favor and watch it. Because if you are a fan of romance anime, you owe it to yourself to watch this series. If you come away disappointed, I would be genuinely stunned. Don't miss out on one of the best romance anime we have gotten in recent memory. It's an experience that you won't soon forget. Thank you so much for watching this video. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed. And until next time, take care everyone. Look forward to the next video.